Governor, thanks very much for coming in today and for your time and, as always, for your openness in interacting with the committee. Governor, you say in your opening statement that the early indications are, in your opinion, that this process is working. And I would put it to you that, in my opinion, the early indicators are that this process is not working, certainly not in the interests of the economic recovery of the country. We see a huge variance in the type and quality of offers being offered by the banks to the borrowers, and a huge variance in the acceptability of the behaviour of the banks, some very good behaviour, some very bad behaviour. We've seen at this committee that an enormous number of the solutions, or so-called solutions, offered so far are either legal letters or really extend and pretend, more term extensions and so forth. And we have had several of the banks come in here to the committee recently, and the Chief Exec said, as a matter of banking policy, they will not engage in any write-downs of debt, even though, obviously, that's part of what the insolvency legislation is meant to do. And even though, if they don't, where appropriate, it will force Irish citizens into unnecessary bankruptcy. So, Professor, the reason I think the process is not working is because the arrears is not the problem. The arrears is the symptom of the problem. The problem is Irish households, or a lot of Irish households, simply have too much debt relative to their current and near-term income. And I believe that the process, as it is playing out, is actually going to just hide the problem. I believe when we finish this process, let's say all the arrears were cleared by the end of next year, I believe that as this is playing out, the quantum of debt will by and large be the same, and the level of household income will by and large be the same. Ergo, the problem will not have been hidden, it will simply, or the problem will not have been resolved, it will simply have been hidden. So I do believe that there is a huge opportunity to get this right. I think if we can mandate solutions like debt for equity, if we can stop Bank of Ireland, for example, pretending that charging a full amount of interest in the Shell proportion is anything other than the normal loan split in half. And I believe that you are a key person to do this. So what I would like to understand is who's in charge. My understanding was up till recently the central bank didn't have much power to direct the banks. So in preparation for the meeting today, I took a look back at the new Central Bank Act which came into power in July, which I think gives you significant new powers. Now, Part 7 of that gives you power to issue directions to the bank. And one of them is you can direct a bank if the financial institution is conducting business in a manner as to jeopardise or prejudice the rights and interests of customers. Thank you. That seems to me that you could give a direction. And part of that direction would be to tell the banks how they can operate. Part 8 is around the type of regulations you can make, and one of them is provision specifying requirements which are to apply in relation to the provision of financial services to a customer for the purpose of determining the suitability of the financial services to the customer, etc. Provision about making loans available, etc. So can I ask you, I'm not a lawyer, in your opinion, do you now have the power you need, if you so choose, to direct the banks? For example, Bank of Ireland, we are not allowing you use this pretend split mortgage. All of the banks, you must use debt for equity in conditions that we deem to be acceptable, and so forth. In your opinion, do you now have that power, or do we, the Oireachtas, need to give further legislative authority to you to get this thing moving properly?
My impression is that we do have the powers that we need to get this done. It's not a question of saying, if only, when we talk about criminal matters it's different, but on this mortgage thing, it's not a question of saying, if only we had the powers we could force them to do this and that. It's really a question of what would we force them to do that would still induce them to behave on a case-by-case basis that delivered the results that we wanted. If we lock them into, you must do this, you must not do that, I would be in a very specific and directive and straitjacketed way, I would be fearful that the banks would say, we don't care now what we do, we're just going to follow mechanically the instructions provided by the central bank, and we are not equipped to go through 120,000 cases of arrears and adjudicate on the rightness or wrongness.
Okay.
We're only sampling these things.
Thank you. So you do have the power.
I think we do have the power.
That is
And
good
if
to
we
hear.
need more, we'll ask.
Okay, can I ask you then, what are you going to do about this banking lottery that's going on? That if you happen to be with Bank of Ireland, in my opinion, you're in trouble. Whereas if you happen to be with AIB, you're probably in less trouble. We have this banking lottery. What are you going to do about the fact that you said yourself that the banks now, a few months into the process, are beginning to offer more sustainable solutions? Well, what about the huge number of people who've been offered the bad sustainable solutions? What are you going to do with those powers to ensure consistency? And the second part of the question, which is very important for these borrowers, is if I'm a Bank of Ireland customer and I've been offered a terrible solution, but I've sort of been bullied into it, and you come along and say, actually, we are going to insist on consistency, will I be able to come back to my bank and say, actually, Governor Patrick Honohan has declared what you have offered and pushed me into not to be sustainable, I want a better deal?
Each case it's case by case. So you can't say so-and-so was offered this and I wasn't offered it. It's not an it. Obviously the banks are going to and should match the design of the restructure in line with the income and resources and potential of the borrower. So not everybody will get the same.
My question
your question is difference between different banks.
What are you going to do to get that consistency?
I'm not seeking exact consistency in the treatment of all persons. Nobody gives that as an objective to me. What we want is that everybody will have a sustainable solution.
6.5 minutes of the
Thank you. Okay, thank you. My last question then, Governor, thank you, is on sustainable. Obviously, two of the key words in your statement and in this process are sustainable and affordable.
Yeah.
The split mortgage, as it is, let's ignore the pretend split mortgage from Bank of Ireland, looks in most cases, if the household increases its financial situation, the bank will knock on their door every 3 years or so and say, we want half of what the government hasn't already taken off you. That equates to a marginal tax rate, essentially, of 76% for the rest of their lives. Do you believe that that is a sustainable solution?
The exact way in which the split is defined is up to the bank. You're pulling 50%.
Well, we know what it is. They came in and told us 2 weeks ago. So my question is, on the basis that for many people it constitutes a 76% marginal tax rate, do you believe that that is sustainable?
Let's look and see. You get a sort of soundbite at the committee. Let's look and see on the files that we will audit, see exactly what they're offering in particular circumstances. The main advantage of the split is for the case where there is a huge improvement in the household's income. So the banks should not go in and expect, oh, we're going to get the warehouse.
I understand. I'm sorry to cut across you just this because I've just run out of time. My question is, do you accept that the split mortgage, as has been described to us, which will constitute a 76% sustainable marginal tax rate, meets your requirements?
I've seen versions that I think will work.
Do those versions include ones where the government takes 52%?
You want me to take one example and
I want you to take the example that the banks have told us that they're using, which is that the bank will take 50% of the net additional income, constituting a 76% marginal tax rate.
I'm not going to adjudicate here on it without seeing the circumstances.
I just told you the circumstances.
Yeah, but you haven't told the circumstances of the borrower. So,
okay.
You know, I want to hedge that answer because
right.
I don't want to knock it out, knock out some scheme which may very well be workable.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.